Hello, and a very warm welcome to this graded motor imagery in the clinic session. My name is Joanna, and I am Director of NOI in Europe, and I'm joined this morning by my very, very good friend and Principal NOI instructor, Tim Beams. Tim has been a NOI teacher for well over 15 years. He has taught tons of GMI courses, and he is also co-author of the Graded Motor Imagery Handbook with David Butler and Lorimer Mosley. So Tim is the man to talk about GMI, Graded Motor Imagery. So I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say today. Tim is an active clinician. He specialises in complex and persistent pain, and he is also founder of an organisation called Le Pub Scientifique, which is an online platform for clinicians to learn about the very latest developments in clinical practice and pain research directly from pain specialists and the researchers doing the work. And Tim will drop the link to Le Pub in the chat because he'll often refer to it throughout the conversation. Have you done that, Tim? You put the link to Le Pub in.
Doing it. Hang on.
Have you done it? Sorry, I don't. You just look like you were looking out of the window. Not that you switched off or anything. Thank you. So these sessions are all about giving you a taste of graded motor imagery and how to practically use it in the clinic. Now, some of you may have already done a graded motor imagery course. So for those of you that have, these sessions will reinforce things that you've learned and also expand on them. But if you haven't done a graded motor imagery course, then it will give you a really good taste of what to expect should you decide to join Tim's next course, which is coming up in June. So just a couple of things to mention before we start. Tim will be talking for about 20 minutes. If you have any questions, please pop them in either the chat or the Q&A, and we'll answer as many as we can. If you want to watch the recording of this session, you can access it on our YouTube channel or in our clinical discussion Facebook group. I will drop the links to those into the chat in just a minute. So today, Tim's going to be talking about the practical applications of graded motor imagery, or GMI. So Tim, what is graded motor imagery, briefly?
Okay. I have another thought. I thought I was talking about something else. So, isn't it? We're into how we integrate GMI into clinical practice was what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
that is the title of this
different,
session. It's integrating it, so but practically integrating it. So yeah.
So for those people who don't know, have never come across it or don't know that well, graded motor imagery is it's an approach that is a stepwise approach to take someone through 3 stages: an implicit motor imagery stage, an explicit motor imagery stage, and mirror therapy. And essentially, these are sort of brain focused or targeted approaches that help clinical and the different neurophysiological effects of pain or movement disorders or other, probably, but we're still figuring that out. So yes, this is a targeted approach to help a clinical situation, or when you suspect that there is certain changes evident, like a loss of inhibition or disinhibition affecting someone's movement.
Great, amazing, thank you.
I don't know whether that was very short and snappy, was it? But I mean, the way that we used to think about it was very brain focused, and I'm afraid I am a bit brain focused, but I feel like we can be much bigger than that. But perhaps this is for us to discuss today.
Yeah, I really like the approach that you're going to take in this session. So sort of come in at what if you're coming at this for the first time and you've not got experience of it, then you know how that might look and how you might be able to apply it in your clinical practice, and then going on to look at something which is a bit more advanced possibly and how that might be applied.
Yeah, I think that and I think what we realize is there's a lot of people who are scared away from it because it
Yeah,
looks too complex and confusing and difficult, and if they might have not tried graded motor imagery because of that, and I get it, and actually that's a fairly healthy way to be. So get and get comfortable with it, learn it. But even when you learn it, I think that there might be sort of stages if you want, and I've very crudely called it like basic, mid, and advanced stage of understanding and using GMI in your clinical practice. So what I'm thinking from a basic point of view is the typical sort of algorithms or pathways that someone can learn where they can help to guide someone through a process so they know how to utilize the various different tools of graded motor imagery. So they would be things like using the recognize app, so asking someone to identify on a picture whether they see a left or a right image of their foot or hand, or whether someone's turning their neck to the left or the right, or using a mirror to create a reflection so that it gives them a sense that the hidden limb is suddenly present, at least visually. So they'd have the basic skills in order for someone to be able to show a patient, take someone through it, and guide them through that process. And in order for you to be able to do that, it's helpful to just know some of the types of conditions that typically are GMI
mm,
is a supported approach as well. So the most common one is complex regional pain syndrome, and then a couple of others I think are starting to show some efficacy for the treatment of phantom limb pain and post-stroke pains and movement disorders as well. So, and there's more than that, but we've got a catalogue of interventions where people are starting to explore those conditions in quite a lot of detail, and there's some support, although there's still obviously we'd love to know more. Then perhaps alternatively, it might be that someone presents with a fear of movement or fear of pain with movement. So
mm,
GMI actually lends itself beautifully to being able to take someone through that process of reducing the association of fear with that movement, or reducing the association of pain that is embroiled with that fear, or fear of pain with that movement. So yeah, there's sort of two, if you want, I guess, reasoning categories that help to identify who I might choose to take through this graded motor imagery process. And the stepwise process, as it was laid out originally, is a 6-week process. And I would say for someone working at a relatively basic level, they're more likely to sort of keep to that standardized
mm.
and fairly well-known defined parameters. So that would be a basic level. You do need some knowledge, and I think you need some knowledge. Otherwise, how do you know what you're doing with your patient? How do you give them some feedback? How do you guide them? So you do need to have some knowledge, even if you're working at a basic level.
Mm.
The intermediate or mid-level, I think we were saying, weren't we? There's elements with the graded motor imagery process. So let's take, I mentioned left-right judgment. So the
Mm.
ability to be able to accurately identify whether you see a left or a right body part on a as it's flashed up on an image on an app, and the time that it takes for you to do that actually gives us some really interesting information. So you can create a data set, you can create some knowledge and understanding about how that person is in relation to the painful body part or painful body side, or the area that they're struggling with movement. Maybe there's some movement disorder, dystonia perhaps is a feature of their problem. And we can use that to help to guide the way that we would approach that person. So for instance, you might identify that there is an attentional bias based on the evidence that you get from assessing the left-right judgment task and understanding whether there is an attentional bias towards, away from the painful body part or side helps to guide your treatment. So in fact, you can very comfortably integrate certain elements of a graded motor imagery approach into your clinical reasoning. So you're doing it not to prove yourself right all the time, because I think that's often what we do in the clinic. We think, oh, I've got this really great idea. I'm going to check that I'm right. And it probably doesn't matter what I find because I'm going to do it anyway. And then you just get on with it. But if we were being, really true to the scientific process, we would be saying, okay, right, I'm going to use this in order for me to assess whether there is or is not presence of attentional bias and what that might look like. And there are times actually you come at it and you think, I really feel like I'm going to find something, and you don't. And that's okay. So that's one element I would say at a sort of mid-level that we would be a bit more fluent with. Another example for me would be the ability in the moment to be able to take someone through an embodiment exercise. So I'm basically asking someone to bring their awareness into their body and notice how their body feels, and perhaps I'm going to get them to do certain things. So it might be, okay, bring your awareness into your elbow, your left elbow. Notice how your elbow feels on the left. Bring your awareness into your elbow on the right. And so I mean, that's very, very crude and quick, Joe. I can see you're doing it.
Doing what?
And this would be something where in the moment you can get some feedback. So the two of you in dialogue together are getting you some understanding of the embodiment features of that person. So how their body feels to them, whether or not it feels like it's theirs, whether it's altered in any way, if there's some sort of distortion or alteration. And there's strength in doing something like that, because some of the experiences that people have are very difficult to articulate. To be able to put into words this, what my body feels like, is a really challenging process. So actually it's a nice way of just bringing the two of you a little bit closer together, and for me or for the clinician to be able to get a sense of what it's like for that person, but also for that person to be in and notice and gather knowledge and understanding for themselves as well. So that sort of elements within the assessment process, if you want, so we can be quite flexible and fluent with the way that we would incorporate elements of GMI. Doesn't mean to say we're then going to use them. It's just gathering knowledge and understanding, and that builds our awareness of that person. It may or may not translate to a treatment. It doesn't really matter. That's not what you're trying to do that for. You're trying to just build a more accurate picture. I got Morton in my mind because it's something that I'm thinking of is I'm drawing that person's portrait, and I'm kind of showing it to them and saying, does it look like you? Am I accurate in my depiction of what you're experiencing? So like a validation process, the reasoning process for me there. Perhaps at a mid-level still would be the ability to be able to, instead of go through that stepwise protocolized plan of, okay, someone has CRPS, they come in, I'm going to do 2 weeks of left-right judgment training, and I'm going to use the app, and the way that I'm going to use the app is I'm going to use this first, then this, which is fairly basic. you would have the ability to be able to individualize it. So you get a sense of, and again, this is in dialogue with that person. How did that feel to you? What did you notice when you were doing it? Let's get some data, let's get some feedback of the process that then steers us in a direction so that we can more accurately identify what is meaningful and appropriate and important for that person, but also the times
Mm.
when they say, do you know what, this isn't for me. I'm really struggling. I don't see the point in this. I get up in the morning and I know that you said do it this many times, but I just, it just doesn't fit in with my life. So you, I hope, at a sort of mid-level, you would have those skills to be able to be in dialogue with that person and make it make sense to them and individualize the graded motor imagery process as well.
Mm.
And then at an advanced level, I mean, look, I've just come up with this myself, so it's not something that we've written about, but I feel like it probably reflects what we see on courses, and certainly my thoughts about how I use it is
You do
that,
kind of know what you're talking about, though, Tim, don't you? So,
I mean, I've thought about it a lot, and I've waffled on a lot as well.
go on.
So there's crucial elements of graded motor imagery that for me would be the knowledge and understanding that we've got from both the patients and the lived experience and the feedback that we've got from them offers us an incredibly rich, creative perspective in rehabilitation. And that's one of my, I would say, probably one of the first things I really tuned into with graded motor imagery is I suddenly had so much more opportunity and potential to work with patients. It was
Yeah.
like in people often get messages, oh well, if this doesn't work, there's not much more that we can offer, and it completely rips up the note. That is absolute rubbish.
Yeah.
To me, it's like we have such opportunity. We have so many different things that we can offer. It's more about finding something that resonates with you, it fits with your life, and let's bring in that creative process. So for me, it's about lifting positivity and being optimistic and creating hope and awareness there. So that would be one level.
Mm.
The creativity side, bringing creativity into your practice and how you do it. I mean, for me, it would be things like someone who is dyslexic, that we could put some glasses on, some glasses with different colored lenses, like a green lens glass, and that means that they might be more, they might find the left-right judgment task an easier thing for them to be able to do. So we are creating a condition that says, oh, this makes this a little different. We're changing and shifting the context and using knowledge from other areas to support what we're trying to do here.
Mm.
So that is the sort of like a little bit of the creative side. The other side fits notions of embodiment and body perception change and the neurophysiologically what's going on as well. So let's put narrative aside. So the living body, if you want, a bit to the side. But what we find with many people in pain is the experience of their body literally changes. And we can see that expressed through movement and touch, which are the obvious things that we do in rehabilitation. We ask someone to demonstrate movement that they're struggling with, or we do some sort of neurosensory evaluation and we get some data. And what we understand is that there are a number of features that shift in terms of their ability to move and the accuracy moving, or how they experience touch of their body, that relate to the the neurophysiological targets of graded motor imagery. So what we could then do at a more advanced level is we could say, okay, given the features and the characteristics of this person's presentation, we have a number of very targeted approaches that I'm fairly sure can offer some help. So instead of us just scattergun like firing like treatment at someone, we are being quite focused and quite targeted with them. And that might mean that you use a specific graded motor imagery process. It might not, but you're using your knowledge to identify the targeted approach in that case. So you might do some sensory discrimination as some for, or you might use sensory discrimination whilst you're doing mirror therapy, and you might sort of power up your and that. But in order for you to be able to do that, you need to really know your stuff. That's
Yeah.
getting advanced. It's getting very funky, and it could get too funky as well. Yeah, because like, how is someone going to do that on their own at home? I mean, that's
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
problem then. But there's some really interesting ways that we could integrate knowledge at a more advanced level. There's also, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And I think there's something that I'm very much aware of now is that there's a lot that we don't understand. I mean, if you listen to Loz, he's so careful with his knowledge, isn't he? Because he's
Lorimer Moseley, just in case you
Lorimer
didn't know.
Moseley, sorry, Lorimer, who obviously was, he was a catalyst for graded motor imagery in the first place. So he's very careful about what we do and what we don't know, and I think that we can
Mm,
listen to him and be mindful of that because there are things where we are reaching out and we're thinking, oh, what about graded motor imagery for an FND population, or what about elements of graded motor imagery for people experiencing eating disorders or who have different
mm,
psychopathologies, and actually or and like, I mean, conversations that I have fairly regularly will be things like Parkinson's or dementia, where there's movements type disorders and perhaps pain as well
mhm.
associated with it, where this may be quite a interesting avenue for us to explore, but we still don't know.
Yeah.
Unknowns, but unknowns don't mean don't do anything. It just means we need to get, living data. You're doing your science, you're doing your research with that one person. It's an N of one in that case, isn't it? So and it's being mindful of the limitations as well as you're doing it. So
Mm,
yeah, I would say that's being
love it.
needing to be quite advanced because there's a lot then to hold in your reasoning, in your thinking then.
I love that. Thanks, Tim. There's a question there from Sarah. Do you mention homunculus man? Oh my God, I can't pronounce these words.
You did it.
So
Somatic,
moves
somatic,
that's it, somatosensory.
somatic.
Cortex in any of your applications. I'm sorry, folks. I'm not medical.
Do I
Tim,
mention, I'm just reading it
go
now,
on.
do I mention homunculus man somatosensory cortex in any of your explanations? Um, I can't remember the last time I did. Yeah. So, but there's merit in being able to articulate how we map out the sense of our bodies. So this would be where the homunculus is. So the representation of the skin is in a part of your brain, Joe, just above your ear here, the somatosensory cortex, the primary somatosensory cortex. And it was an area of focus in research and pain research some time ago, like really when we were doing, me doing it, when researchers were doing like the beginnings of brain imaging findings. And CRPS is one of those areas where actually there does seem to be evidence perhaps of a shift and a change within the primary somatosensory cortex, but it's not what we thought it was. It's actually a little bit more complex than that. And the shift and change, as with ever, what we found is as the technology has improved, the ability to be able to investigate whether or not there are changes within the primary somatosensory cortex has also altered and changed. And it might be that, in fact, the representation on, well, this primary somatosensory cortex would represent this side, for instance, but actually we start seeing changes on the contralateral side. And it's not always that we see features of things like hyperexcitability within of touch to the skin. You know, some people have that, so not everybody has that. So it's about identifying the specific features for that individual. And dependent on that, you may or may not decide to go down the brain route and educate them about that. But if you are using GMI, you probably will do it at some point.
Right. Thanks, Tim. Thanks. Well, we've run out of time. Actually, 11:29. How good is that? Right on time. So brilliant. Thank you. It always strikes me whenever we do the sessions about GMI, just what a practical, useful tool it is. And if you're somebody that likes things to be quite structured, then it gives you some focused and targeted ideas to use with your patients, and just the different ways in which you can use it. I didn't fully appreciate just how diverse it was, Tim. It's really, really useful, isn't it? Right from assessing and communication, building relationship with somebody, right through to what you were just talking about there.
Yeah,
right? So
and
absolutely
then
everything in between.
and the new there is quite a big trial. I mean, it's coming to the end of its data collection, but the way that they've mapped that out as it includes elements of education and coaching and things like
Yeah,
that. So it'd be really interesting to see when that comes out, the shift and the change in people's understanding of GMI. So yeah, it's
yeah,
I mean, it should be a standalone treatment. It's a part of a treatment package that's individualized for that person. But to
yeah,
get
yeah,
comfortable being there, to get comfortable getting there, it requires a bit of work.
yeah. And if anybody listening today is interested in doing that work and taking a deeper dive into the graded motor imagery process with Tim, then he has got a course coming up next month. I have dropped the link to it in the chat. It's online, so you can join from anywhere in the world. It starts on the 5th of June. Tim, can you just give just a very, very brief overview about what it'll be like to spend that time with you in that course? Lots of
Um,
fun, obviously.
it will be amazing. It will be amazing. I mean, it's going to be a pretty deep dive into some of a little bit of philosophy, a little bit of neurophysiology, talking about brains and stuff like that, and the various different models that we think support the knowledge around GMI, so embodied cognition, predictive processing, etc., but also historically going back and thinking about the brain imaging revolution and Melzack and the neuromatrix, but we want to bring it into the clinical world. So we're going to talk about people, how we've used it. I'll introduce some of my patients. You can hear from them as well, and we'll try it out and literally feel what it's like. So we'll go through the various different stages. I think this time I'll probably start a little bit like that. So we'll probably do like a little, in a way, like a taster, and then the deep dive. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking this time. Yeah, and it's going to be different to the last course because
It can be.
I've done different stuff since then.
Yeah. Thank you, Tim. And even though it is online, it is completely practical, isn't it? So you'll be trying everything out with Tim in groups, and you'll get to use all of the supporting tools that encompass that are there to support the GMI course. Okay, guys, thank you so much for listening today. Thank you for joining this live. There will be another live in a couple of weeks' time, and then so keep your eyes open for that. And then I think we're going to take a bit of a break over the summer, aren't we, Tim? And we'll be back in the autumn. But do keep your eyes open for the next live. And again, if you want to join Tim's course, then we'll send you details out after this. Okay, thanks, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Cheers.